Hi, everybody. Happy International Women's Day. I'm Charlene Kripikavich, the CEO of viaSport, and my pronouns are she and her. What a great day this is, and I'm really excited that you're joining us. I'd like to first of all acknowledge that I'm calling in from the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I also acknowledge that, I am a descendant of European settlers. And with this, I realize that my journey to reconciliation is to really understand the truth of colonization and to commit to steps, both personally and professionally, to advance a meaningful shared future with Indigenous communities in Canada. So it's really my honor and privilege to work and play on these lands. Today, we're here to celebrate International Women's Day and to celebrate women's achievements, to raise awareness, and to take action to drive gender parity. Across the sport ecosystem, we all play an important role to advance gender equity and improve access in our programming, in funding allocations, and in organizational development. Today, I'm really thrilled to welcome this amazing group of leaders to share their stories and perspectives. I want to thank them for joining us today and to thank Kevin and the viaSport team for advancing this conversation. Together, we can and will embrace equity to strengthen the sport ecosystem and make meaningful change so that more girls and women and those identify as women find a place in sport. So Kevin, over to you. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thanks Charlene. I'm Kevin Bowie, I'm the Manager of Sport Development here, and I'll host you through today. And I'm leading a lot of gender equity work right now, and we'll get to some of the exciting projects that we are working on here at viaSport at the end. But right now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dehara September. Dehara is the founder and director of the She Plays Academy and Venus FC. She serves as the Technical Operations Manager for Surrey FC and the Executive Director of the Black Coaches and Administrators Association of BC. Dehara recently appeared on CBC speaking about issues facing women and sport and women's soccer. She is also a mom. And welcome, Dehara. Over to you.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. My name is Dehara September. I am a woman, a mother, a wife, a sister, a businesswoman, a professional soccer coach, a former professional soccer player, and the founder of She Plays Soccer Academy and Venus FC. I am honored to be a part of this event, embracing equity during International Women's Day. It aligns with my vision to create a more equitable and inclusive environment for girls and women in sports. I believe that events like these provide a platform for women to share their experiences, challenges, and successes in sports and inspire the next generation of female athletes. As we conclude Black History Month and celebrate International Women's Day, I find no better time to acknowledge two Black Canadian queens of sport. Barbara Howard was the first Black Canadian female athlete to represent Canada in an international competition. And Charmaine Hooper, one of the 6 original members of the Canadian women's national soccer team, was the first player to have 100 caps for the national team and broke many records in national and international and collegiate play. Delving right in, we're talking about how we can build the equity. So building equity with intention requires a deep commitment to change. It means acknowledging the past practices may not have been equitable and being willing to make changes to ensure that equity is at the forefront of everything that we do. We cannot simply hope that equity will happen. We must make it happen with purposeful actions and a clear understanding of what equity means. One of the most critical components of building equity is developing and implementing good policies. Good policies provide a roadmap for creating equitable practices, programs, and services. They are designed to ensure that everyone has equal access to opportunities and resources, regardless of their gender, race, ethnicity, or any other characteristic. Policies that are designed with equity in mind create a level playing field for all individuals and promote fairness and justice. However, having good policies is not enough. We must also engage with an open mind to ensure that these policies are successful. This means willing to listen to the perspectives and experiences of others and being open to feedback and suggestions for improvement. We must create spaces where everyone feels safe and supported to share their opinions and ideas, and we must be willing to take action on this feedback to create meaningful change. When we talk about embracing equity, we cannot overlook the unique challenges faced by mothers, administrators, and athletes. Mothers face particular challenges in the workplace and are often forced to make difficult choices between their careers and their families. Administrators, too, face significant hurdles as they work to create equitable policies and practices within their organizations. Athletes, especially for female athletes, often face discrimination and a lack of access to resources and opportunities. To ensure success for mothers, administrators, coaches, and athletes, we must create policies and practices that take into account their unique needs and challenges. This means providing support and resources for working mothers, implementing policies that support gender equity in leadership positions, and creating equitable opportunities for coaches and athletes at all levels. It is essential to recognize that embracing equity is not a one-time event. It requires ongoing work and a willingness to adapt as we learn and grow. We must be willing to have difficult conversations and to challenge our assumptions and biases continually. We must also commit to creating spaces where everyone feels welcome and valued, regardless of their background and experiences. Embracing equity requires a deep commitment to change, the development and implementation of good policies, an open mind, and a willingness to address the unique challenges faced by mothers, administrators, and athletes. It is my hope today that today's discussion will inspire each of us to take action and work towards a more equitable world for all individuals. And I pass that over to you. Thank you as we introduce our panelists.
Great, thanks, Dehara. Yeah, we have an exciting panel today. Today we'll start with panelist Rick Benson. Rick is a volunteer and professional. He spent his life around women's sport. He spent over 25 years serving with either softball or ringette in the community in a variety of roles, from board member to coach, executive director of Softball BC, sport operations manager with Ringette BC, and most recently the acting executive director for Ringette BC. His passion is around women's sport and was developed early through his daughter's desire to feel safe and welcome in sport. He's been helping empower the next generation of female athletes through his granddaughter. Our next panelist is Nancy Wong. As the Performance Services Manager for Wheelchair Rugby Canada, Nancy supports a diverse athlete population with a wide range of equity and advocacy needs. Wheelchair rugby is also uniquely a mixed gender sport and requires a lot of intentional strategies to recruit and retain female athletes in the sport. As the first person with Wheelchair Rugby Canada to take maternity leave in over 14 years, she was fortunate to benefit from forward-thinking policies and the value of female contribution, new parents, and staff retention at in that organization. Nancy is a graduate of Simon Fraser University with a Bachelor of Kinesiology and specializes in active health and rehabilitation. She's a personal trainer and enjoys spending time with her husband, her daughter, and her dog. And then Emma Gibbons is the Executive Director of Volleyball BC. Through her strategic leadership, Volleyball BC has advanced significant projects around safe sport, diversity, gender equity, inclusion, and belonging. Most recently, they have implemented their Same Game Challenge project with Canadian women in sport. Previously, Emma served as Executive Director of West Vancouver Field Hockey Club and was a staff member at VanOck for the Paralympics and Olympic Games and Director of the CEO's office. Emma is a volunteer who serves in many roles with viaSport, along with North Shore Girls Soccer Club as the Vice President. Our last panelist is Danika Mazur, and she is an elementary school teacher, freestyle coach, and Danika developed the Girl Stylers program to support girls and women as they are typically left to fit in a mostly male-dominated sport, and this allows them to feel success and be accepted. And her role as events and program coordinator at BC Freestyle, She coordinates Girl Stylers events and aims to create access points to for women and girls to engage in sport and be their best selves. When she's not coaching, Danika spends time outside paddleboarding or cross-country skiing with her dog. Thank you all and welcome. Danika, back to you. Or sorry, Dehara, sorry, back to you. My fault. Sorry.
Yes. We'll start with our first question. This question is for Nancy Wong. What does building equity with intention mean to you?
When I was reflecting on a lot of these questions, it got my brain going, and a lot of these things are unsaid. And I'm really humbled to have the opportunity to share this with all of our panelists today. Dehara, you mentioned this in the beginning, and it's intention is that we're being purposeful with an expectation of an effect. So we're also placing a value on the equity and the importance around it. So for me, intentional actions means that there's a thoughtful planning process with specific targets or objectives in place. That equity is not an afterthought or a wish list, nor should it be kind of a reactive action. As we've seen over the last few years with the pandemic, employment really affected the marginalized groups. I think parents, specifically women and mothers, were negatively affected during the pandemic. Either it was loss of work or making really hard family decisions where the mother would have to stay at home, with other reasons, that we can discuss on, but things like pay equity, family dynamics. But there were a lot of decisions, made within the family of having social pressures of taking care of your children. So there's a lot of disruption of work of women in the workforce. So I think ensuring that we're not reactive to this positive emphasis of equity, we need to ensure that organizations are not ticking off the boxes and saying that we're providing equity, and really just understanding what the real question is at hand. What does equity really look and feel like for women with intention? And for me, to round out this really important question is, intention, building equity with intention is that we're authentic with the purpose, with an expectation that there's going to be an outcome.
Absolutely. Furthermore, on that question and your answer there, what are some of examples of the policies that have successfully promoted equity in your experience?
I will just prelude that I love my work. I love what I do. And a big part of my identity was the role that I had in my organization with Wheelchair Rugby Canada. And on top, another layer of that is, my own personal insecurities of fear of missing out. So when I knew I was going to be a mother, there was this fear of, oh no, I'm going to miss out on a lot of opportunities because I'm taking this year off. Little did I know, as a rookie parent, you really don't have time to think about these things when you're taking care of yourself and your new baby. But for me, my lived experience is that I've had the privilege to experience where an organization took initiative in taking the time, investing time and resources into a policy in addition to a supplement while I was on maternity leave. I am forever grateful for Kathy Kiju, who is now retired. She was our executive director at Wheelchair Rugby Canada, in addition to our very active Wheelchair Rugby Canada board of directors. Like Kevin mentioned before, I was the first person to take maternity leave with Wheelchair Rugby Canada, and I've been with the organization for more than 14 years, and I've been around the sport for over 16. So, for me to think like I'm the first person, like this seems a bit odd, but I think it goes to say a lot of things about sport in general. The thought of being a mom or planning to be a parent is already challenging, with a layer of sport, as we all can agree to. There's another layer of challenges where, successes are proved in a cyclical nature. Either we're gearing up for an Olympic or Paralympic Games or World Championships. So for women, that's another layer that we have to manage and think about. How do I plan a family in these given years? So I think I know the exact moment where I felt I was in the organization where it valued equity. I'll just tell a short story here, and I'll round it out to where our policies in place that really made me feel that we prioritize equity. It was 2016. I was at a leadership conference, and there was an opportunity for individuals in the audience to share their experiences. In this case, I actually forgot what the topic was, but I remember vividly Gail Hamamoto, the executive director of BC Wheelchair Sports, had shared her experience, how Kathy Kidju invited her to travel. And at this time, she was a new mother of a newborn. And the thought of traveling all the way to New Zealand for an opportunity that would further advance Gail and her experience in leadership was probably quite a lot at the time. But, there was obviously self-doubt, but there was another woman seeing the potential, providing encouragement, instilled confidence, and support, and that this was doable. So this wasn't a policy, but it was the act of someone having that authentic mindset that there is an opportunity here to empower someone. And so, like I said, this was not a policy at the time, but out of the authenticity of Kathy Kidju, she left a legacy in our organization. And brought fire to a lot of women right now to have these conversations in their organizations of what they can do. So I'm very fortunate that Wheelchair Rugby Canada initiated a supplement in addition to the childcare support policy within our organization. This puts a firm stance that I'm a valued member in my organization, and the investment into me is prioritized. This is equity with intention. What Dehara asked earlier. This is taking a firm stance, and it's with intention, with purposeful action. So, with that policy, I was able to travel with my daughter the year after my maternity. And in my role, I travel quite extensively with the team, both internationally and domestically. So to have her on the road with me, where I had an additional support person to take care of her, but I was able to bring her along. So I didn't have to choose my role. And being a mom, I was able to do both, and I was wholeheartedly supported from our organization. And it was not my asking; it was the organization stepping up and saying, "This is what we'd like to do for you and for future parents in our organization." So that experience is invaluable. It's something that I can't measure. And it's something that will have a ripple effect in my daughter's life and other women around me. So I'm happy to share that with each of you, that those are the two things that my organization has done, and it has caused a lot of great conversation with other women in the parasport and the able sport world of what can we do within our organizations to support new mothers. So thank you for the question, Dehara.
Yeah, that's great. I'm actually, I've gone through it, and I'm going through a little bit more now. And as my kids grow a little older, and I'm, I need to try and figure out some more things on the balance of mom life and coach life. And I really appreciate that. I have one more question on that. How, because you mentioned about you're feeling like you're privileged enough to be in a situation where your organization is implementing these types of policies. So how do you think they can evaluate the effectiveness of the policies and make changes over time if needed?
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And the three things I always think about is listening, learning, and leading. I think the biggest part, as you mentioned in the beginning, Dehara, is really listen to what is actually happening, and listening to the people in your organization. We may not see immediate changes with retention, because that can be a multitude of different factors. But providing a safe space for communication, the one that you mentioned before, is hugely important. Placing a value on feedback. We don't want to have a suggestion box where things go in and nothing really happens. So we want to be able to close that loop of having a safe space. The value of each individual's feedback is extremely important, but also closing the loop by making action and making sure that, we're valuing all those processes in place. And I said in the beginning, listen actively with the intention to understand, but also having empathy and leading by learning. Oftentimes when we're reactive, to the example I said earlier about the unfortunate events of the pandemic, we're being reactive without really, putting policies in place without actually understanding how does this affect the end result, the end person. So I think listening actively and making sure that we're having empathy and leading by wanting to learn. Some practical things are obviously entry and exit interviews. There's a lot of emphasis on hiring with diversity, which is incredibly important. What I find is, the next very important thing is how do we keep these individuals in our organization? Do we understand what is valuable to them? Having those open conversations in entry interviews and also with exit interviews as, individuals grow in their positions and grow into different organizations, understanding maybe one of the factors of why they're leaving and maybe how can we as an organization be better. Obviously, evaluating the standing policies that you have and addressing those gaps. But I think a big responsibility is being transparent, being able to share policies, being able to have open conversation and safe spaces, and having that human connection. Having a spot at the table is one thing, having a voice, but being heard. I think those are the key things when we're thinking about evaluating the effectiveness of our policies and seeing if the changes need to be made over time.
Listen, learn, and lead. Seems so simple. And I'm learning a lot just right now. So I'm excited for more of this discussion. Thank you so much, Nancy. This question is for Rick Benson. What are some potential barriers to engaging with an open mind, and how can we overcome them? Oh, Rick, you're on mute. Can't hear you yet. Okay, we can. Oh, there you go. We can hear you.
Sorry, technology. Yes, yeah, technology.
No problem.
Friends.
Did you want me to repeat the question?
No, I did hear it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm in awe at all of the things that both you and Nancy have been talking about. And to be quite honest, you've stolen everything that I had in terms of my answers, what I wanted to speak about. So really, it's going to be a reinforcement, I think, of a lot of the things that you've talked about. And Nancy, I absolutely love that, the phrasing that you would use. To me, the biggest barriers with being able to approach things with an open mind is the unconscious bias that so many of us have, that this is the way that we've always done things. It's been fine. Why do we need to change things? And the listening skills. Both Dehara and Nancy have touched on that and spoken quite a bit about the listening skills, and really, that is, to me, is the key to being able to overcome those barriers. And intentional listening. It's one thing to be distracted, to be multitasking, to be on your phone and doing different things, but it's another thing to actually stop and listen. Make that again. Forgive me for using these analogies, but making that eye contact with the other person that you're speaking to, putting down all of the distractions, and actually really listening and trying to understand where the other person is coming from. We had a situation here with Ringette, as a matter of fact, not that long ago, something similar again to what Nancy had touched upon, where we had an individual that's a very strong coach. She's a role model, a leader within our sport, and she had the opportunity to be able to attend the Canada Winter Games recently. She's a new mother, and you know, as Nancy was talking about with Gail, this opportunity came up, but how does she deal with that? And I'm really, really proud to say that this organization, we weren't quite as advanced as Wheelchair, but we listened. We heard that there was a concern there, and so we came up with a way to support her so that she was able to go with a caregiver as a nursing mother to the Canada Winter Games and be able to have her family support around her, which also, the incredible part with that too was that it reflected off on all of the other members of the team, and all of the players with the team, the 16 young athletes that were there could see this coach who they look up to, who they depend on, and they could see the support that she had in order to be able to follow her pathway. And it was just, I really believe that ripple effect will go out so far amongst athletes, clubs, coaches, administrators, not only in our sport, but so many other athletes at the Canada Winter Games that saw that in action. So it's accepting that we don't have all the answers. It's understanding that the way we've always done things are not the way for us to be able to move forward to, and to have the respect for for people when we're engaging in how we can improve, how we can be better, to really accept and listen to what they're saying, and then put those strategies into effect and help create something that results in programs like supporting our coaches, our officials, our athletes, our administrators in their journey to be able to do everything that they want to.
That's great. I really like to hear of the coach that needed support to go to the Winter Games. That's great. And I hope that more organizations can pick up those policies and understand how important that is, because it really is, it's about family and being able to still have these different experiences that are great. So thank you for sharing. Furthermore, how can we ensure that our biases and assumptions do not influence our decision-making processes?
That's again, that's a really difficult one, I think, Dehara, because we all have those biases, we have those influences, we have those things that affect our decision making. And the challenge to me is to again be able to take that step back and recognize that I as an administrator and as a male, and that I have these unconscious influences, I have biases, I know that, and to be able to step out of that and to truly listen, absorb, and understand what people are saying, and to recognize when those unconscious biases that I know I have, when they're starting to affect or impact that decision making, that I can take those conscious steps to be able to move out of that and hear, listen, respond respectfully, and come up with a plan of action, come up with steps that allow the other people, the people that we're dealing with, allow them to be able to move it forward. So Again, it's a very difficult thing, and I think that it's that open listening, it's that conversation, it's being honest as well sometimes, Dehara, that there are times when it's not a good time for me to engage in open communication. There's other things that go on in all of our lives. It could be any number of things, and to feel secure and safe enough to be able to say to someone, you know what, I really need to schedule this conversation for another time, or this discussion for another time, and be able to come back to it. We can accomplish so much more that way, and not being afraid to do that, rather than jumping in and trying to force whether it be my opinion or whatever, but respectful, mindful conversation, discussion, collaboration, and not being afraid to say, I need to take a break, I need a time out, let me come back 15 minutes from now, a day from now, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your words. It shows a lot of allyship there, and that's great. Thank you so much. Danika, this is for you. What are some of the key challenges that mothers, administrators, and athletes face when it comes to equity, and how can we address these challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, I do just want to say that I'm honored to be speaking to you all from the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish people. I feel very grateful to live, work, and play here. My perspective on this question is from the place of administrators and athletes. I think that we have a really unique situation in our sport, because freestyle skiing, it is unique in the sense that our male and female athletes train together and compete together on the same courses. Whereas in so many other sports, they do have different accommodations for men and women. In golf, they have different tees for men and women, different size basketballs, different hurdle heights and track. So I think that the reality is that the needs of men and women can be different. Specifically in our sport, the top degree of difficulty tricks in the women's field are sort of baseline degree of difficulty in the men's field. But I'm not saying that women's freestyle is not insanely progressive and exciting. We just recently had one of our Canadian athletes, Megan Oldham, was the first woman to ever land a triple 1440, which is, for reference for everyone, 3 flips and 4 spins on snow, which is unbelievable, mind-boggling stuff. I think women are pushing the envelope in our sport and in all sports, and it's so cool to watch, but I digress. The fact is that in our sport, our male and female athletes are training and competing together. So I don't think it's so much a matter of equal opportunity. I actually do think that all of the work we've been doing is leading to more equal opportunities in freestyle and many other sports too. But I think that these equal opportunities can limit equity. So as I mentioned, what we're dealing with is that there's sort of 2 components that we're working with. We have shared courses and then also shared resources for men and women. I'm just going to preface that in freestyle, we have 5 disciplines. So we have slopestyle, big air, moguls, halfpipe, and aerials. And they're all very different needs and different cultures amongst the disciplines. But generally, with our shared courses and venues, the reality is that specifically for slopestyle and big air, with some amazing acrobatic spectacles going on, the courses and features are designed for men. And they have to be, by no harmful intentions of the organizers or builders. We have athletes out there who are doing double and triple flips and rotations and skiing at top speeds down a mogul course. We need our venues to be calculated and precise for those highest degree of difficulty tricks and runs. But unfortunately, what that means is that a good majority of the women's field is at the mercy of surviving the course rather than actually truly thriving, because it's not built for them. So that's kind of one component. And then the other component is the shared resources. So in our sport, and I know that there are other sports that might, draw a parallel to this too, but the co-ed training in an individual sport, which we are, means that the coaches are responsible for managing their focus between vastly varying goals, skill sets, and levels of comfort amongst their males and female athletes. And it's proving to be a very common challenge that takes away from the coach's ability to implement the best training possible, as well as from the athlete's experience. Our coaches are doing a phenomenal job, but after many years of observations and conversations with coaches and athletes, like all over the country, it has left me wondering if we could be doing better. So to address these challenges, if you ask me if I think separate courses and separate coaches for men and women is the magic answer to equity, it's not really that simple. I think there is a lot of value in offering athletes equal opportunities to shared experiences in sport. And it's likely the reason that we are so progressive and so many other sports are too. But I think that having the option and valuing the experience for training and coaching that is specific to girls and women is going to be the game changer. And so that's exactly what our goal is with Girl Stylers.
That really rings true with me, because that's part of why I launched She Plays was specific training for girls and women. So we understand that. Furthermore, what are some key components of good policy that promote equity?
Yeah, I think gender equity has to be sport specific. So whatever the components may be for one particular organization, I think the most important aspect is that the organization is proactive with their policymaking. Don't wait until you are faced with an ethical decision, because the least supportive thing you can do as an organization is to leave the decision-making up to some poor volunteer at the registration desk or a new coach in the field with their athletes and families. So you should be having the conversations now to create language that is inclusive and including the voices that those policies will affect in that language. Seeking guidance and guidance from experts and representatives so that you can provide good policy to your membership, and then revising those policies again and again, because gender is multifaceted and it deserves more than just a prototype policy.
For sure. I think of that as being your team and organization, and your coach needs to make sure that you're prepared for something that might come up. So I agree with that it's really important to have those conversations now, implement something now, and when something comes about, then you can address it at the best way that you can. So I totally agree. Danika, how can we continue to promote and prioritize equity beyond International Women's Day?
Well, from the standpoint of an organization, it certainly helps when there is someone within the organization whose purpose and dedication is to supporting female athletes and coaches in the community. But I think that gender equity in sport needs to be a core competency for everyone involved. It needs to be a value that's embedded in all roles, all areas of play and training and competition. As I said before, gender equity is sport specific, and I think it also should be athlete centric. So organizations should work to develop and enhance their programs so that they fit the athletes that they have, while also making space for new athletes. So I think that continuing this work after today means logging on tomorrow and planning the next camp or coaching clinic, writing the next program description, applying for the next funding opportunity, and all of that with women, girls, and folks who identify as women in mind too. Because those little efforts and small initiatives, daily are that's the important work that will snowball and lead to a more equitable landscape for sport.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Emma Gibbons.
Hi.
Question is for you. Hello. What role do you see individuals, organizations, and communities play in building equity with intention?
Wow. Just a small question. I feel like it's so interesting coming last in this discussion, because hearing everybody else's just amazing experiences and ideas, I feel like I've completely lost the thread on what I was going to talk about, because you've fired up so many thoughts in my head. But I mean, I think we've said a lot of this already. Like, everybody plays a role in that. So there is an individual role, there's an organizational role, and there's also a community role. So I think, as long as everybody is engaged and motivated, that's when you're going to really see change happen. I think that the word building equity with intention can seem super overwhelming. Like, I remember coming into this and coming into my role, and we hadn't got a strategic plan. We were at the brink of starting to think about what should our focus be for the next few years. And that was very, very overwhelming. And so it was really important for us to do consultation. And that's when the idea around like inclusion and these words kept coming out about, we needed to service everybody in the community. We needed to meet needs of different groups. And I just remember there was one quote in a survey that we did of about 600 people. And it said, if Volleyball BC doesn't do it, then who else is going to do it? And I really felt like that weight on me. Like, I really want to try and create some meaningful change in a gender sense. But yet again, on the surface level, we're like a lot of female dominated sports. It's very easy to look at us and go, well, there isn't an equity issue because 70% of your participants are girls. In fact, there's actually a big drive to try and get boys to play. So you kind of start from that point. But again, I think this is where the intentional piece came in. Like, it was us actually going, well, is that true on all levels? And that's where we started to embark on this journey with Canadian Women in Sport and the Same Game Challenge. And I actually can't say enough good things about it. If people are really interested in starting those conversations within your organization, I found it a very supported process, very intuitive. The tools were really well done. And, for us, those of us who like to be very action oriented and have a roadmap, it was very methodical to follow. But it allowed us to then intentionally look at like, well, what is going on, and take that next level down. And that's when we started to see things like, oh, okay, so, there are fewer female coaches than male, or there's like a lot of 50-50 gender breakdown at level 1 refereeing, but by level 4, there's no female referees. Mm-hmm. So you then started to be able to pick apart and go, okay, so are we equitable? What are the driving factors behind that? And that really and even really interesting things. I mean, some of those are sort of well documented in sport about female progression, but some of the really interesting things that we found were like our average age of coaches. If you were a man, the average age was much older, but actually, like, as a female, the average age was very young. So then, well, why is that? Like, why do we have that? Maybe it's motherhood, maybe it's not. Like, do we actually know what we think we know? So that whole process of actually then really intentionally looking at ourselves sort of started to catalyze a piece of work which has gained momentum over the last couple of years, which is really where we can start to look at like, what's our strategy for addressing some of those issues? What are some key initiatives? We've, been piloting this year a female mentorship scheme for referees and coaches, and really try and respond and tease out to some of those issues that we have. So, I mean, I would say that, as I say, everybody plays a role. I think that's a given, but there are those of us, especially I would say those in maybe in a governing sense, where our responsibilities are beyond just an individual. Like, we have a responsibility to a community, and I feel like that's where we can really have impact.
Mm-hmm. Further on that, what can we do to play? What role can we play in advocating for promoting good policies that support equity?
I know it's so interesting, I think, with policies, because they work, as we've said, on so many different levels. And definitely, being a provincial sport organization, we take our role as a governing body really seriously. So that usually means we're putting in place policies, and we don't always realize, because we're operating here, what that then translates to down on an individual levels. And we don't realize those impacts until we hear those stories. So I think I would just say that taking that responsibility as really seriously, and also making sure, as we've said before, that they're not static. So you don't feel like you've done the policy work and then you can check it off. I think I've got a couple of examples. A really good example for us has been, we've spent a lot of time on safe sport policies. It's something that we've worked with our NSO on and other provincial counterparts, and we've got some pan-Canadian policies. There's about 7 of them. They are aiming to address abuse and maltreatment, which, as we know, is a really significant issue. But have we actually looked at it from a gender lens? We haven't done that piece of work. So collectively, we got together in December last year, and then we're saying, well, actually, like, are our policies doing what we really want them to do? And are they creating a welcoming and belonging atmosphere? And honestly, at this point, I don't know, but it's a piece of work that now I'm starting to look at. Maybe we bring in some inclusion consultants and look at all of our policies and just check that we don't have some unintended consequences of things that we felt like we should really have in place and are very important, but we just maybe don't know what those lived experiences are going to be like and what kind of impact are going to happen. And I think a tangible example of this for me as well came up out of our focus groups that we ran as part of the Same Game Challenge. We ran focus groups with referees, women referees and women coaches, which were really impactful and actually just so amazing to give us so many ideas of different ways or different things that we could implement. But one really small thing stuck with me, and it was that the female referees, we were talking about like why the rate of dropout is so high. And again, like most sports, there's a lot of abuse and there's a lot of like, a male-female dynamic and people not feeling comfortable. Well, one suggestion that someone had was, well, you make us wear a badge and it says our level on the badge. And if someone looks at me and it says level 1, they don't have respect for me. And that really plays into the dynamic. And I was just like, that's something so small and so just so simple. Why do we, so I've actually raised that with Volleyball Canada. Why do we have these levels? If that is creating a barrier, or if that is creating an experience that is contributing to one gender not feeling like they have a role to play or is playing into those dynamics, why do we need to say that? Why do we need to say, like, it's like having an N on the back of your car? People, it's a mixed blessing. And so, but that again, I think is coming back to, as an organization, you don't always know what the individual experience is. And so policies need to adapt and need to keep being reviewed when these situations come to your attention.
Yes. My thoughts are going as well, because I've experienced a little bit of that as well. And whether it's wearing a badge, but it's also the type of maybe coaching credentials I may have in the moment, even though I have experienced different types of coaching around the world. So my experience is different in a different way, rather than the coaching course that I'm about to attain in Canada. And that's very interesting. And a really good, and another, like some of the things that we've all have been saying, like sometimes things just seem to be so simple, but it's not, and it's how can we implement that? You did give me a little bit of the answer to this, but I'm going to give you this question anyhow, because I think maybe you could give a little bit more on, go a little further on it. But how can we incorporate feedback and input from mothers, administrators, and athletes when developing policies and practices that promote equity?
Well, yeah, I feel like that's something that we have done a ton of in the last few years, and it's so time consuming. I'm not underestimating the amount of time and effort it is, but the relationships you build, and also the strength and the quality of the work that you produce is just so valuable for it. But yeah, we've gone through a number of different ways of trying to get feedback, because again, we're a big entity, we're a big sport, we have like over 10,000 members, and it's very hard to get meaningful feedback in that environment. So we have, you know, a starting point, as I said, in the Same Game Challenge was that we wanted to create some focus groups. So we just sent an invitation to every single registered female referee and coach and said, we want to spend some time with you. And will you sign up for some of these groups? And will you come and tell us about the barriers that you faced and the ways that you feel that we can play a role in changing that? And we ran 4 of them, and they were really well attended, and actually for the women who were involved, sometimes it was the first time they'd been in a group where it was all women. And so I was very impressed by the openness, the willingness to like share experiences. And also, I mean, this is the hard thing about asking for feedback. As the organization, you have to be prepared to hear things that you might feel a bit defensive about, or you might not feel good about, or, you know, maybe weren't even part of what you had decided to do, but now you're hearing about them. So it was definitely like a very, you know, it was myself and another colleague, female colleague, who's also very skilled in facilitating. And it was, we just listened with an open mind, like many people have said, and we were just very interested in what came out of those. And so out of those 4 groups, we ended up basically crafting 4 recommendations that we wanted to go forward for our organization. And it was things about female-specific mentorship, highlighting and raising the profile of our female contributors in our sport, and then also, you know, being more proactive in terms of the recruitment, as well as all those little changes like I talked about with the badges and all the rest of it. Now we're on sort of a journey. Like that was a year and a half ago now, and so we have since then been looking at, okay, well, how do we formalize this a bit further? So we're looking to put together a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, have some working groups that come out of those, and that's exciting for us because, again, you know, we've got to recognize there's some intersectionality there, and there are, you know, we may not be reaching some women that we could be reaching just by the nature of who is typically involved in our organization. I would say, and I think this has been mentioned as well, that the feedback loop is really important too. Mm-hmm. So we were very intentional about sending every single person who came to those groups, like, this is a summary of what everyone said, this is what we're going to do. And then we have like followed that up with, okay, you know, maybe 6 months later, we're doing a female mentorships program. You told us that you thought this was going to be important. We want to pilot this. So you're constantly then kind of reminding people, like, you provided us with feedback and we're trying to actually action some of these. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, a bit further along, it was like, well, now we'd like to have a diversity, equity, inclusion committee. Would any of you like to be involved in that? So you're trying to sort of create these advocates as well within the community because you're engaging them with it. Because like others have said on this call already, if you're just going to ask and then there isn't the feedback, then people get tired of telling you things really fast. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's not easy getting feedback, especially if you're working in an environment with thousands of people. But I think the more that you're open to people coming forward and you create those little pockets of opportunity, the better that you can make sure that everything that you're doing is really trying to achieve the outcomes that you want to have happen.
Mm-hmm. And the basis of communication and learning more about each other.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you so much. What an amazing discussion that we've been having. And I feel my heart feels very full. And, you know, moving forward, I think, like I mentioned before, it's so important to have these discussions. And I hope that it inspires more people who are listening in to take action. Because there's one thing about discussing it, and then the next is taking action. Thanks so much. I'll hand it over to you, Kevin.
Great. Thanks so much, Dehara. Brilliant conversation. It was really, really good. Just full of gratitude for you guys participating in the panel. It was absolutely excellent. And thank you all for attending. Might have like 1 or 2 minutes to take 1 or 2 questions in the chat if you'd like. Please feel free to populate your questions now. And if you don't have any questions, I have a few final comments.
Kevin, you will take the chat questions, right? Because I can't see them.
I will if
Okay.
they come up for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, well, I'm not seeing any, so that's great. You were very thorough, all of you. So I'll just take like a quick minute here to plug a few viaSport initiatives. We had just finished our soft pilot of our first gender equity community of practice, and it's already got tremendous engagement so far. And we're looking to take on new members to this community of practice. So if people in the audience today or any of our panelists would like to be part of that, they can email me at kevinb@viasport.com or .ca, sorry, and we will make sure to include you in that discussion online. It's a Slack channel, and then we have a variety of engagements via video or presenters that come in and meet quarterly. So it's an exciting opportunity to share best practices and advance gender equity across the province and the sports sector. So that's great. And then we also have a She Plays resource that you can download on our Learning Center that goes over sort of some of the statistical information gathered from participant-centered design work that we did with multiple sports and in partnership with Sport Nova Scotia across the province that led female-sponsored, female-developed gender equity initiatives within their sport. Most of them were either female-dominated sport or male-dominated sport. I know freestyle participated in it in the Whistler corridor and thought it was really excellent. That also pairs with a slide deck that helps you navigate participant-centered design, and you can use that in both either disability inclusion and or gender equity inclusion. It's a tremendous resource, and I highly recommend that you check it out. So thanks very much for your time today, and we'll sign off for now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.